second season of Reacher. Let's talk about it right now. All right, we are back to talk about some TV. Some good TV this time. I have not watched Reacher before. I basically binged the entire first season, and now I was able to finish the last episode. I think it just got released. I like the fact that it's not bingeable. It is now, obviously, but I liked having the anticipation of the next upcoming episode. So let's talk about it. But my name is Frank Zanka. I'm an award-winning screenwriter, novelist, comic book writer, and your host. I'm also a working line producer, hopefully shortly. Now it's coming. It's going in the third week of January. Not a whole lot has started up yet. Kind of hoping something starts soon. People have got to start getting into pre-production here. Yeesh. So anyway, let's talk about Reacher because we're getting back to basics with this. This is a Amazon Prime original series based on the book series. Of course, it was also a couple of movies that was acted in by Tom Cruise. Truthfully, the Tom Cruise stuff was decent, but really not memorable. I think that it was more made for television than it was for feature, because this is definitely more of a standout type of action show than it was the Tom Cruise films. I think it was kind of underwhelming for Tom Cruise, but overwhelming for television. So it's definitely found. I think it's found its niche. Plus, I think that he is supposed to be an imposing figure, and of course, Tom Cruise is not imposing. You went from 5'2" to 6'2". I think Tom Cruise is 5'5", but still, you have almost a foot difference, and who knows what the shoulder difference is. Alan Ritchson is a monster. Let's talk about him for a second. Let's talk about the cast, and then we'll get into per season. So he was originally Aquaman in Smallville. And why isn't he Aquaman now? He is perfect for Aquaman now. You can't compare him to Momoa. The guy pulls off imposing. He has more of Arthur Curry's personality as Reacher than Momoa does. So, God, I wish he was Aquaman. We would have such a better film than what we have now with Momoa. The fact that he doesn't talk, and he's respected, and everybody knows he's a strategic genius, even though he doesn't really communicate. That's Aquaman. Ay, ay, ay. It kind of pisses me off. But anyway, so he was in Smallville, and Serinda Swan, who was also in the series in the second season, she played Zatanna. So both of them came from the DC, basically. They both played DC characters. On top of that, he played a second DC character, Alan Ritchson. He also played Hawk from Hawk and Dove in the Titans, which I didn't even realize it was him. Of course, he was killed off pretty early on. But yeah, I didn't realize it was him. He was kind of not memorable in that position because she kind of stole the limelight from him every time. But yeah, he was so he's done these kind of superhero roles and these fight moves and everything like that. Man, he's not very tall because he's only 6'2", but he is imposing. That's for sure. So for season 1, well, first of all, season 1, Malcolm Goodwin, who I have not seen since iZombie, I do have Fall of the House of Usher on my Netflix list, but I haven't watched it yet. Both he and Willa Fitzgerald, who plays Roscoe in the first season, so they're both in the first season, are also on Fall of the House Usher together. So I haven't seen that yet. I just looked at their credits. Then you had Maria Sten, who is a standout in both seasons as Neely, although it's spelled differently. It's spelled Neagle, so the G is silent. Um, she's great. She's great. And I just found out, too, she is a writer on Big Sky. Wow, Big Sky is a great show. And on top of that, she's an excellent actress when it comes to action. And she's 5'10". She could play an Amazon. I don't know where they found these people, but damn, the whole cast is really damn good. Fun to watch. So let's talk about the first season as opposed to the second season. I don't want this video to be too long because I could probably talk about these two seasons probably for hours. Which is great if you're on a live stream, but not if you're in some kind of a review. So in the first season, we know nothing about the character, right? He ends up showing up at a small town where he's pretty much immediately arrested. And he's got nothing to do with the murder and everything like that, but he just kind of came across it. So with these shows, you have to suspend disbelief a little bit because he keeps, jumping into these adventures, but it's kind of convenient, that he just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. At least with the second one, he's kind of called in. But anyway, so he meets the police captain there who is new to the position. He's only been there for a few months. And he came from Boston, so he came from a bigger city. So the smaller city doesn't really trust him. But we find out later that he lost his wife, wanted to get away. He's always kind of playing with the ring. So we have quirks. We're already creating quirks, which is the sign of good writing. Okay, when we're giving our characters quirks and we kind of expect certain things out of them. So throughout the entire season, Reacher is trying to eat pie. Every time he tries to eat pie, he's interrupted. That's pretty funny. And also he's got Clark Bar. Clark bars are a big thing for him. So then we have the wedding ring for Oscar Finley, which again is Malcolm's character, and he was really good. He plays the same character he did in iZombie, which he does very, very well, except he did it even more stiff this time. But when he had to kick ass, he could. So it's a very, very good character. I'm sure he was very happy with it to take that on. Then you had Willa Fitzgerald's character, who played Roscoe. I don't know who would name their girl Roscoe, but whatever. It was definitely different. And they played on that. He's like, so what's your first name? He's like, that is my first name. So she's immediately nice to him. She knows he didn't do it, but she still doesn't take any shit from him. And I like the relationship between. One thing that Alan Ritchson does well is that the female partners that he has with him, he shows them respect, that they know what they're doing, and he tries to protect them, but only to a certain extent. He doesn't overprotect them. He knows that they're capable, and he lets them do their thing, but he also tries to protect them when he can. So it's all very honorable. It feels like old Bond stuff because you have really good-looking guys and you have really good-looking girls that are both kick-ass, and they don't shy away from the hotness side of things. He's off. He doesn't have his shirt on for several scenes, and then we have a nudity scene as well with Willa. And then in the second season, we have Serinda Swan and Maria Sten, she hides her body well because she has an amazing fucking body. But we have them in, hot dresses where they're going to, this gala event or whatever. and Surrender Swan has this very low key cut thing, and of course, they're oogle it and the whole bit, so they don't shy away from the sexual side, which I appreciate. So it's back to being like an old action show from the 80s, 90s, where we're taking away the political correctness, and thank God for that. Because we need to go back to, Baywatch and shit like that without having anybody complain about it. So, I mean, that was the number one show for a reason, and it definitely wasn't the writing or the acting. But I really like this show. So in the beginning, we don't know anything about him. We're learning about him because I haven't read any of the books. And of course, I watched the Tom Cruise films, so I knew a little bit about the character. But I think I know a lot more now than I ever did with the Tom Cruise films. So, and I like the way he plans, but we also have to suspend belief because there's a few times that he should be dead, but he isn't. And definitely in the second season, they had every opportunity to cut off limbs or shoot them, to where they could still answer questions but would never walk again, So there's a few times where I'm like, all right, we have to just go with it because we won't have a third season. She's hanging out of the plane, and gets to climb up when they could have just tossed his legs over, but instead they're kicking him. Yeah, some of the stuff we really had to suspend disbelief on. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Now, the first season is obviously a lot different than the second season. The first season, we're dealing with small town cops. We're dealing with a character, a villain that's being protected by the rest of the clan because he's got, enriched family and all this stuff. And then the second season, we're dealing with all the military. We get to see flashbacks of the military. We get to see his old crew. Parts of his old crew come back because one of his old crew members was killed, and they're piecing these things back into each other. And we also get to see, because I think that I forgot his name. Yeah. Dominic Lamberdazzi. So he's obviously very Italian. He comes off very Italian. He comes off very New York Italian, which is also where I'm from. In fact, I was just watching something with Deborah Ann Wall today, and her husband is from Dix Hills, which is where I live. It's crazy. So Dominic he plays Russo, who's the cop in the second season, and he's always, even though Reacher was towering over him, he was always in his face, which is kind of how I am. I always end up picking fights with people that are taller than me. So anyway, so we get to, so I think, so I bring him up because I think that he was in Jail Kings, something Kings, and Malcolm was also in that show. So we have a lot of people that we have like reunited from other shows. It's crazy. Breakout Kings, because they were all in prison, and that was a really good show too. So anyway, so we have really good actors behind this. We have really good stunt people behind this. We have gunplay all over the place. We have fight scenes all over the place. I love when the two girls kind of broke off on their own and were doing their own thing, and the guys were doing their own thing. It was really good stuff. But again, the first people like the first season better, and I can kind of see why, because it had that small town thing, and we had more of a mystery going on. And the second season was more military. But I like the team better in the second season. So I liked the second season better because I liked the fact that these characters all had a history. And I thought that the actors did a really good job of showing familiarity with one another, that these guys had been together through thick and thin in the past. And I don't know how they shot it, because there was also that fight scene in the bar. So I think if they had shot some of that stuff first, which is probably what I would have done, so that the actors can have that familiarity. Because when we're seeing the flashbacks, they don't have the familiarity. They're learning one another. So if they shot it in that kind of order, then I think the actors would get more comfortable with one another, and we could see that. That's the difference between shooting television and shooting film. But the problem was that I think that the first episode of the second season had those flashbacks, so we could have done the flashbacks first. But as to shoot a film takes a month, right? 3 weeks, 4 weeks on a high end, 5 if you're doing a major thing, right? So, but then normally it's like, 4 to 5 weeks on a high end. Where with a television show, especially one like this, where it's 50 minutes long or 45 minutes long, you can't shoot that in a week. So you're probably shooting it over a 10-day period of time, right? Which is almost 2 weeks, right? And because it's 5 working days, right? So that's 2 weeks. And then you have 8, so you have 16 weeks. So 4 weeks, so you're shooting it at least 3 or 4 times longer. So your actors are really getting into their role more. They have more exploration. They have more time. They have more time with the other actors. They're doing more read-throughs. They're doing more prep because they're prepping as the other show's going on when they're not on their off days, etc. When they're sitting in their trailer, they can be seeing getting scripts in from the future and stuff like that. So shooting television, that's why I like television better than I like film, because of the fact that there's a lot more, you're delving into the characters a lot more. The actors have a lot more to delve into. Where with film, you're in and done in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You see these people for a month and you don't see them again. So except on this show, apparently, because years later they were bumping into one another. It's pretty funny. But yeah, so I don't know. What do you guys think of Reacher? I thought Reacher was great. I definitely am so happy that it got greenlit for a 3rd season. But this is a return to form. This is, which is funny because Prime also does all this, woke Lord of the Rings, right? Which is a disaster. And then they go back to true form from like the 80s and 90s with this show. So I wish they would say, because this has like been #1 now, right? This has been #1 for several weeks already. So that means it's resonating with an audience where Echo wasn't even in the top 10. So that should tell these streaming companies what audience want to see, as opposed what there's being shoved down their throat for the sake of just inclusion. We don't watch things based on inclusion. When we're flipping through, different things that are on our streaming channels, when we don't stop and say, oh, that one's inclusive, let me check that one out. Can you imagine? Siri, can you show me the most inclusive show on the Prime, please? Who does that, right? And when I go to Prime, right, even tonight, it had a 1 through 10, right, and Reacher was #1, and etc. Right? So, I do you think anybody's watching this because it's inclusive? No, these people have got to wake up eventually and say, hey, let's make something that people want to see as opposed to what people want us to make. That's where the difference is. You make something for an audience. That's like saying, I'm going to write this book, but I'm going to write this book to make sure nobody sees it. Or only 3% of the world would even care about it. Why would you do that? As a creative, you want as many people to see your show or read your book as possible. So you're going to write something that's as broad a spectrum as you possibly can. And I don't mean that by cast. I mean that by interest. Are you writing something that interests everyone, regardless of the cast? Like Bass Reeves, that's has a very diverse cast leaning towards black, but I think it's doing very well, because it's the Old West and there's already interest in the Old West, so it's that's just where the difference is. And that's why when movies like, Flower Moon and Napoleon and stuff like that, you're only going to hit a very, very small group of people that want to hear about history. But meanwhile, if you do something about the Crown, and you talk about, Princess Margaret, or you talk about, all the stuff like that, the women flock to that because they like that kind of history. But those same women are not going to flock to Napoleon, that have to do with wars and stuff like that. They're more about the class system. So that's the difference, is you have to know your audience. What's your audience when you're making something? It's so, so important. And I think that Reacher really knows its audience. They're going after the James Bond audience. And on top of that, I've heard a lot of women already coming back and they're watching it because of, it's like Arrow, the hot guy that takes his shirt off all the time. You don't think that the sex sells on the female side? Hell yeah, it does. So they see this hot guy, Thor-wise, they're like, yeah, I'll check that out. Is he taking his shirt off? I'll check it out. Meanwhile, the guys are like, yeah, whatever, he's taking his shirt off. But what about the women? They taking their shirts off? So it's hitting both sides. And that's the only way to hit number one. You can't hit number one by only having one sex. I'm not going to say gender. I'm going to say sex. One sex watching this thing. And that's why I think that there's I've seen reviews by women, so I know the women are watching it. So it's great. Of course, you're not going to hit the people that are watching Barbie, but you're going to hit the women that like action films and like a little bit of mystery and like a little bit of beefcake. What's wrong with that? We got no problem. Being men, we have no problem with that. The objectification of men, we don't care. We don't care. As long as that same guy is kicking ass and getting the girl, we're good with it. Anyway, again, I don't want this to go too long. Again, I can talk about this forever, but I do love the fact that we're getting back to form and people are responding to it, and we're getting a third season out of this. And, yes, we have to suspend belief, about, these people. They're not rubber like X, Fast X, which he's also in Fast X, by the way. He's not really shining in Fast X, though, in comparison to this. I think this role was made for him, and that's why I think Aquaman was made. I would love for him to play Aquaman in the future. Oh my God, if they could bring that back. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm not going to talk anymore, I swear. Anyway, check out some of my other videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. Give me the thumbs up. Give me the middle finger. Whatever. Also, remember, at the end of the month, I'm finishing up the game Kickstarter build out right now. It's been taking me days and days and days to do that. Marcus Spears and I are working on a deck builder game, Classic Monsters. So we've been play testing and things to that effect. So I'm very excited to bring that to you in the next couple of months. But I am going to finish up with Lords of LA and I'm going to try to do if you haven't jumped in on that, I'm also going to try to do an Indiegogo. But anyway, thanks a lot, guys. And check out my other videos. Give me the thumbs up. Give me the like. And if you haven't subscribed, why the hell not? It's free. Click that bell. All right. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much for watching.